school therapists their therapy focus is to make sure that your child can function at the same level as all of their peers in the classroom. That is their goal. Their goal is not that your child will be successful,
Right.
that they will keep improving in their therapy goals. No, when they get to that standard level, then we're done with them.
Hey everyone, this is Yvette Hampton. Welcome back to the Schoolhouse Rocked podcast. I'm back with Peggy Ployhar, and this is such an important topic that we're talking about this week because I think so many of us have some sort of specialized learning need in at least one of our kids, maybe multiple kids, or maybe us ourselves. And so this is such good information and just great encouragement that many of us need. Peggy, thank you for joining us again this week. Before we roll into this, I want to thank our sponsor, CTC Math. If you guys are looking for a great math curriculum, check them out, ctcmath.com. You can try them out for free. Go on their website, ctcmath.com, and see if it might be a good fit for your family. Peggy, thank you for coming back with me again today. I want to talk about curriculum. We talked a little bit about curriculum when it comes to dealing with our children who have special needs. But I want to dig a little bit deeper into that and talk about what some of the good options are. You know, you talked about when you first started, there were really none. I mean, you didn't have any books to go off of. We didn't have the world of Charlotte Mason and classical and eclectic and unschooling and all the things that we now surround ourselves with as homeschoolers. And I think there's some benefit to having a lot of options today, but I think that can also be very overwhelming for your typical homeschooler, and especially overwhelming maybe for the homeschooler who has a child who has specialized learning needs. So how should that parent get started with trying to find the right curriculum that would best fit their child? Where do they find it? You know, what programs should they look for? Give us all the good information on that.
Okay. So a lot of times, you know, parents will come to us at conferences and my team goes, what do I do with this? Because they always give us their diagnosis of their child and say, okay, what's the curriculum for that? And I was like, there is no curriculum created for a diagnosis, because even one child on the spectrum is different from another child on the spectrum. And so please don't go by your child's diagnoses. But there is a wealth of curriculum, and some of it's going to work and some of it's not. And if you look at the comments just in the homeschool community within SPED Homeschool, you'll hear parents, you know, doing unschooling, Charlotte Mason, everything you mentioned works. Yeah. But here's the caveat. Different things work for different families. Yeah. And it has to do with your personality as a teacher. It has to do with the schedule of your family. And a lot of times there's a lot of things going on. There's medical needs. There's things that, you know, parents are working, and all the other things that typical homeschooling families deal with. Us with learners that are different, we deal with them too. But then we have to take into account, you know, how much time are we spending on therapy? What is our priorities? So a lot of these things we have to weigh in with that. And so we always tell parents to find a curriculum that's flexible, because that is going to be what makes it work. And so when we review curriculum, and we have reviews on our YouTube channel and on our website, we have a review crew actually that handles curriculum, tries it out with their kids, looks at it from that perspective, and really does look, is it flexible enough to change it? And I've even told, when I spoke at the Homeschool Trade Association a couple of years ago, to curriculum developers, I told them, you need to give parents more options on how to use your curriculum instead of just a standard one way, because they may not use it just for 1 year. They may use it for 2 or 3 years. And be okay with that. Don't say, I've got to shove all this in 1 year because this is what the curriculum says. No.
Right.
And so, just learning to be the one that in the driver's seat, try things out. You know, a lot of these curriculums have free samples, just like you were talking about CTC Math. Try them out. Yes. See if they work with your kids. Some kids that love computers don't learn well on computers, and you won't learn it until you try it.
Right. Do you recommend parents to go? I mean, I always recommend for parents to go to homeschool conventions, but do you recommend for these parents specifically to go to a homeschool convention and try out different, not try them out there, but, get their hands on different curricula that might work for their families?
Somewhat. There aren't always a good selection of curriculums that are really flexible that go to conferences.
Hmm.
And that's why we do offer those reviews on our website and our
Okay.
YouTube channel, just because we tend to pull from some curriculums that we're selling to private and public schools.
Hmm.
And they know that there's a market in the homeschool base as well. So they wouldn't particularly go to the homeschool conferences, but some of them do. Also, just the care options. If you have a child with more severe needs, conferences are sometimes usually difficult to attend anyways. So,
Yes.
so yeah. So there, I mean, if you can, there are options there. When if we're at the conference, what we do, if you come to our table, is we will star every single table you should visit that has
Oh,
curriculum that's flexible. So that's something that we offer. And actually, if there's an app at the conference, we will highlight every single one of our partners that's at that conference.
okay.
So yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So you actually have a team that reviews different curriculum
Mhm.
for, and I'm assuming they use it for their families or for families that they're working with.
Right.
And then just I've not been on that, but is it kind of like a movie review where do you rate it and you kind of
We do.
describe what it is
We
and
have a
how?
written review,
Okay.
we have a video review, and then we also do unboxings. But it depends on what level our partners pick when they support our
Hmm.
nonprofit as to the type of review that we do. And we also
Okay.
give them feedback too that's helpful to them in
Sure.
their products.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
That's really exciting. That's a really good
Yeah.
resource for people to be able to use. Is your YouTube channel, is it SPED Homeschool?
Yep. You just search SPED Homeschool. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. We'll put those links in the show notes. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
What we do at IEW is break through the noise of the grammar and the writing prompts, and we say, this is what you do, step by step. And I've witnessed it over and over again, both watching Andrew teach and hearing from parents, this is the best writing program. We've made it so easy and made it really affordable. So any mom can teach writing to their children using our course, and we guarantee it.
To try 3 weeks of free lessons, visit IEW.com. We are back with Peggy. You mentioned when we were talking about curriculum therapy, and I know that there
Mhm.
are different kinds of therapy options for kids who have specialized learning needs. Talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So a lot of parents feel very intimidated because they see therapists as professionals.
Hmm.
And therefore, I need to seek out somebody who is a professional so that my child can get therapy services.
Right.
So, yes and no. I would really say pray about it. You don't need therapy on an ongoing basis most of the time. Sometimes you need a therapist to come alongside you when your child is at a stopping point, just to maybe help you to figure out what exactly are we dealing with.
Mhm.
And then there are different kinds of therapists. Of course, there's occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech therapists. There's also what we call an educational therapist. And
Okay.
educational therapists are kind of trained more to help students with their learning needs, but they also are usually trained to train a parent to help their child with that. So if you want to take on some of that load and you feel like, well, I could kind of do this. Maybe I see what these therapists do with them. I want to try it myself. You can work with an educational therapist, or even on our website, we have links to free sites written by professional therapists that are written in verbiage and language so that parents can actually use their resources. Because a lot of times, a lot of these like OTs, PTs, SLPs, they write for other therapists to use, but there are a few select ones that actually write them for parents. And so we love pointing parents to those resources because they're free,
Yeah.
and you are equipped to do this. And the more that you continually do these therapy services in your home on a regular basis versus taking your child once a week to therapy, actually they're more effective.
Yeah.
because your child is constantly being reminded of these different things that they need to work on instead of just once a week get for an hour.
Yeah. It's so interesting that we live in the world that we live in, because it used to be where you didn't have any, well, it used to be you didn't have any options for therapy. And then
Hmm.
it was where you had only the options for the professionals to be able to help with therapy. But now, you are able to offer some resources to parents. And there are resources, I would imagine, even on YouTube, like you guys have a YouTube channel. I
Yes,
don't
so
know
I
how much you do
interview a
with
lot
therapy
of
there,
yes, I
but
interview a lot of different experts. That's
yeah.
what's my broadcast every week because we focus on a different topic every month. And I've interviewed a lot of therapists on there, and they go into specifics on how
Yeah.
to help your children with speech issues, handwriting issues, a plethora of things, sensory issues. We've covered it all. And so yes, there's so many good resources there. Just do a search.
Yeah.
But I want to also attack this thing that parents say, but the school's set up to do such a good job. And I want to warn you, if you think that, okay, well, I'm going to use this free service that the school offers, here is why we really recommend against it, is because school therapists are their therapy focus is to make sure that your child can function at the same level as all of their peers in the classroom.
Mm,
That is their goal. Their goal is not that your child will be successful,
right.
that they will keep improving in their therapy goals. No, when they get to that standard level, then we're done with them. And we're not going to talk to you, mom or dad, either, because they're not trained to do that. They only see your child and then they push them out the door again. I'm going to share a quick little story because
Yeah.
this really gets to this point. I had a mom call me and say, "My son's been doing occupational therapy at the public school, and they said he just graduated, but he has so many more occupational therapy needs." And I said, "Well, what is he doing right now?" And she said, "Well, they were training him how to get on and off a bus because." Well, of course, kids need to take a bus to school. But the problem was he never took the bus to the school. His mom drove him
Oh
there
my.
and did, to the occupational therapy. He then learned how to get on and off a bus, and then she drove him home.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, what else does he do that may be helpful with his, body movement?" Because that's what occupational therapy. She goes, "Well, he does taekwondo every week." And I said, "That's your occupational therapy."
Right. Wow.
So think about what are my end goals with my child? Not just that we need therapy so that it looks like it should look in the school.
Hmm.
Your goal is to develop your child into a productive citizen
Hmm.
in the world we live in, and to live out God's goal for their life.
Yeah.
Pursue that. Don't pursue a therapeutic standard.
Yeah. Yeah. So you talked about different types of therapies, and there's occupational therapy, there's physical therapy, there's speech therapy. You said educational therapy.
Mhm.
Can you broke down educational therapy? Can you break down a little bit the other types of therapies that there are, and then how do
Mhm.
we know if we don't have somebody to tell us? How do we know which
Right.
types of therapy our child might be in need of?
Yeah. So, I mean, you can always go to a diagnostician or a psychologist or educational psychologist that can give a more advanced diagnoses, and they
Okay.
can actually break those down for you. Those tests are quite expensive. I will just warn you ahead of time. But if it's something that you really feel like this is going to help my teaching, it is worth the investment.
Okay.
And it is an investment. Physical therapy is basically the movement of the body, muscles, and just usually for kids who have limited mobility, a lot of times a physical therapist, and you see a lot of elderly doing physical therapy or
Hmm.
after surgeries.
Yeah.
So that's the types of things, just stretching, especially if a child's in a wheelchair. Those are things. But again, you can do these stretches at home. My
Yeah.
parents
Right.
did this with my siblings. I know this. But occupational therapy it can get down to handwriting, pencil grip. It has more to do with the mechanics of how you function and just your body functions with different environments.
Okay.
Speech therapy, of course, is speech, but it is also has to do with everything that with verbalization with the mouth. Some speech therapists also get into using the devices for communication if a child is nonverbal. And so learning how to use those communication devices sometimes is their area too. And then we have like sensory therapists. A lot of times they are also physical therapists, but they help kids on the spectrum who have sensory issues and do sensory integration. And so there's a variety of different things. And so, yeah.
It's so interesting. My girls have not needed, any serious therapy for anything, but Lacey, my youngest, when she was little, she could not pronounce her R's. She could not say any word with the letter R and be able to pronounce it properly. And so like her sister's name is Brooklyn. And so she couldn't say Brooklyn. It was Brooklyn. And so my best friend's mom is a speech therapist. She has been for many years. And so I remember we did a Zoom call because she lived, several hours away from me. And she said, let's do a Zoom call. I just want to just observe her and do some, just quick little, exercises with her and see where she's at. And she was, I think Lacey was 5 at the time when we did this. And I was getting so nervous because I thought, oh no, what if she never learns how to pronounce her R's? And so she did these exercises with her. And it was the funniest thing. She said 7.5. At 7.5 years old, she'll have her R's. And I was like, 7.5? I mean, that's so specific. Like, how do you know 7.5? She said, trust me, by 7.5, she'll have her R's. If she doesn't, then you might want to consider speech therapy, so that she doesn't grow up, to be an adult who can't pronounce her R's. I'm not kidding you. It was like 7.5 to the day almost. I mean, all of a sudden, one day she was pronouncing all of her words with the letter R properly. And I realized it. It had maybe been a couple days that she had been doing it, but I realized it one day and I'm counting the months and I was like, she's 7.5 years old. I mean, it was so just astounding to me that she knew. And so it's neat because these therapists oftentimes they know, especially if they're very experienced, like my friend's mom, they really do know exactly where these kids are and how to get them to where they need to be. But it seems that you would need to find a therapist that would work really well hand in hand with mom and dad to be able to provide. And like you're saying, that's why you don't want to stick them in a public school system and just say, here, have at them and let the system decide what's best for your child. Because you as the parent, you know what's best for them. You just might not know how to get there.
Right. Yeah. And that's why using a therapist for a short period of time, you don't think that, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to pay for these services for years.
Right.
No, you can pay for 1 or 2 sessions, get what you need out of it. And if you feel like it's a good investment, then yes, you can continue, but you are not married to this therapist. You don't have to continue to use them.
Right. And if you have a therapist who's maybe not a good fit for your child or for you, I'm sure there are other options to find one that is a better. I think oftentimes as parents, we tend to think, oh, this is what my only option is. And so I'm just going to go with this one. And we forget to remember that there are other options. There are other people who do the same thing who might be a better fit or, just be able to relate to your child a little bit better than this other person. So, okay, we are going to be back tomorrow because I want to talk about a few more things. We had mentioned finding your tribe, finding your community and those people who can come around you. But the other thing I want to talk about is how do we figure out when our kids are on the spectrum? Because I know that if a lot of parents who listen to this have really little kids and maybe their child is very young and they just see some kind of quirkiness in them, they see something that they're like, I'm not sure. It seems like something might be a little bit off. Yeah. But they don't know where to go even to figure out. So I want to talk about that as well. Thank you, Peggy, for joining me again today. Thank you guys for listening. If you've not yet watched the movie Schoolhouse Rocked, the Homeschool Revolution, go to the website, schoolhouserocked.com. You can get all the information there that you need. Invite some friends over to your house, have a watch party and watch this movie. It is so encouraging. We keep getting responses from people. I mean, it's almost daily that we hear from people saying how much this movie is impacting them. We saw a post the other day and one of the ladies said that every time she watched it, whenever she heard that she could do it, it would bring her to tears. And I just thought that's exactly what we want. We want parents to understand that they can do this homeschooling thing. Whatever child God has given you, you can do this, parents. God has given you every single thing you need in order to accomplish what he's called you to. And it doesn't matter who your child is. It doesn't matter who you are. God is enough. He is the God of the universe, and he's going to give you what you need. So take courage, be encouraged by the movie, be encouraged by this podcast, and join us again tomorrow for more encouragement from Peggy Ployhar. SPED Homeschool is her website. We will put that in the show notes so that you guys can go and find out all the great information that she and her team have worked so hard to bring to parents who just need these resources. So thanks, Peggy. And thank you guys for listening. We'll be back with you tomorrow. See you then. Bye.
You know, what we've got to look at is, what does the Bible say about how we're to train kids? What does the Bible say about what is the educational methodology that we should use? What's the priority in education? Who's in charge of that? Who ultimately is responsible for the education of your kids?
At the end of the day, education is discipleship, and this is something I didn't understand until I was probably 3 years into homeschooling. The Bible teaches us in Luke 6:40 that when a student is fully trained, he will be like his teacher. And as we look around the culture right now, I think it begs the question, who is teaching our children? Who is teaching our children, and what are they teaching our children? My very first instinct is to protect that child, right? It is our natural instinct as parents. And yet we set that instinct aside when we send our children to school. And to me, the primary benefit of having my children home with me is I am able to impart my worldview to my children to help them navigate what's happening around them from a biblical point of view. And then we incorporate academics into it, right? We begin learning science and math and history and reading and language. And as we do that, it begins to weave a wonderful tapestry that makes our family stronger because we've learned these things together through the grid of Scripture. And when our children graduate, then we have confidence that we have taken every opportunity that God has given us to shape the hearts and minds of our children so that they can go into adulthood and serve the Lord.